The thoughts, views, opinions, and testimonials shared by the host and guests of this podcast are for faith promoting purposes only. Latter day Stories does not represent the official position of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints.
All right, welcome to another episode of Latter Day Stories. I'm very excited to have this guest, mostly because of the issues that we've had trying to get this going. So before I took my break and life started lifing, um, we went back and forth on trying to get a date to start recording, and something always came up for one of us. Um, and then I stopped for a little bit, and then just right now, I think we spent about an hour, 50 minutes or so trying
Yeah.
to get this going. I've had no issues so far, and all of a sudden, I'm having 50 minutes of technical issues, and so something is trying to stop this. So I'm glad that we are able to get this figured out. Fingers crossed, everything goes smoothly. But I want to pass the time over to you. Introduce yourself, whatever you want to say, what you like to do, who you are, and why you wanted to do this.
Okay, so my name is Elisa. We live in the Northwest. I'm a mother of 4 boys. I have 8 grandkids. We're big into the outdoors. Really believe that family doesn't play together, stay together kind of family. I personally grew up in kind of a, excuse me, yours, mine, ours family. A little bit of mixed religion. Growing up, not super, I should say active, but some of my siblings were not active. My husband grew up in a very stable LDS family, I like to call it, and somehow we met, down at BYU, my first week at BYU, and yeah, it's been just a dream ever since. We just celebrated our 39th anniversary, and
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So it's not been all roses, right? I mean, every marriage kind of has its little path you follow, but been super proud of the path we have been on, and really really proud of our family, our little family we have. So it's a little bit about us.
Awesome. Um, yeah, 39 years, that's not something to scoff at, especially today.
Right, right.
I mean, I've had family and friends, even mission friends, where it's very quick to people divorcing and whatnot. And I've been able to see how that affects families. And, I don't wish on anyone. So, again, kudos to you guys going through. I know, like you said, ebbs and flows when it comes to marriage, but 39 years is impressive. So, that's awesome. Um, so, you mentioned your husband grew up in a very stable LDS home. Remind me, were you born and raised in the church, or are you a convert, or what's the background there?
So yeah, I was born into the church. I was not. I'm kind of. This sounds weird, but I was kind of fuzzy about this. I'm pretty sure I was not born in the covenant. I was sealed in my
Okay.
parents, I believe, when I was just pretty young, a few months old, maybe 6 months old, perhaps.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. I'm gonna have to check my records on that. That's pretty sad. I don't know that. I do remember we lived in Alabama when I was young. I grew up in the Army. Okay, my dad was in the Army for
Okay.
22 years. So we moved all over the place. But I remember the strongest influences in my life was living in Alabama for my younger years. I remember the missionaries coming around quite a bit. I was blessed by a missionary as a baby.
Okay.
And I have a, yours, mine, and ours family. My dad had his 4 kids. My mom had her 2 kids, and they were divorced, got married, and had me. So kind of a Brady Bunch family plus one.
Gotcha.
And it was an awesome I consider them all my brothers and sisters. It was an awesome family, but we had our issues. I had a couple. I had a brother that was very volatile and very violent against my mom as we were
Gotcha.
growing up. I had a sister that was pretty violent. I do remember this. It was kind of part of my journey a little bit, is kind of growing up and being very afraid and very witnessing some scary things that a little kid shouldn't have to witness.
Yeah.
And my mom had cancer when I was about 10 or so, and she went into remission, and then she got cancer again when I was in high school. And I think looking back on those times, I think I just was in survival mode.
Yeah.
You learn how to survive. You witness some of those things, and you become a peacemaker. You don't want to. I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. I'm just gonna just kind of hide behind the doors back here.
Yeah.
And then my mom's sick, and so I don't want to create any problems for her anymore, right? And so that became kind of part of the background of my story a little bit, is some of these earlier childhood problems. And I'm sure everybody has their issues growing up, right? We all have our dysfunctional
sure.
pieces to our families. And so,
Yep, that is true.
and they rear their ugly heads at sometimes.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I was I was born in the church for the most part, and we're pretty active for the most part. And
Okay.
and grateful for that. Really grateful for that. Kind of really helped shape a lot of my belief system growing up.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. And so you said you went to BYU. That's where you met your husband. So you're pretty active, like you said. It seemed for the most part throughout your young years and going to BYU. What was your faith journey like, I guess, since then?
yeah, so since then, we got married pretty young. I was on the track team at BYU, and I, speaking of being an anomaly, right? Earlier talking about getting on this technology thing, I ended up getting pregnant with my first son while I was at BYU on the track team, and so that was kind of a fun journey. And but it was really a blessing, right? And so I had my first son there, and we graduated, moved on, kind of got into our life, moved up here to Northwest, and things were pretty good, and I felt like I was pretty faithful. I felt like I had a pretty strong testimony, I thought. And then things just kind of, life just kind of happened. And I started recognizing that I kind of got to the point where when anything was kind of going smooth in life, I began to be on guard. Like, what's around the corner? What's lurking around the corner?
Yeah.
And so, and sure enough, I remember being in Utah before we moved up here. What's looking around the corner? Well, my brother was diagnosed with AIDS, and he ended up passing away, in 91, 92. And so it just seemed like I was always just, I could never be comfortable with peace in my life,
Yeah.
And then I began to view it as like, okay, I've been doing all these things all my life. I've been going to church. I've been, keeping myself faithful. I've been keeping myself clean. Like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah.
What is this? Why am I doing this? I began to get a little bit of anger. Well, a lot of anger, actually. And I'll never forget. So I coached track and field up here, and coached for 30 plus years. And we had a boy on our team who was out at the Pacific Coast and drowned. And he drowned in a spot where I kind of introduced our team to. We went out there to have like a bonding experience. And he had gone back there, not with our team, but gone back there on his own. But still, I kind of felt responsible, right? I kind of felt this. And it was devastating. They don't teach you that in college, by the way, to teachers, of how you go back to a classroom and the desk is empty.
Oh, man.
So that was kind of the catalyst for me, to be honest with you. That was the catalyst of like, I got pretty filled with anger, towards God. And I thought, what else do I have to do to get kind of some sort of, why do I have to have all this loss in my life? What do I have to do to get you to care about me, And so then I kind of started unraveling a little bit, and I started not kind of be the happy-go-lucky self that I was always, had been all my life. And then some other things kind of just sort of surfaced in my life of my past. I started having these memories of some sexual abuse when I was a kid. During those times, my mom had cancer, and I was kind of surviving on my own a little bit.
Yeah.
And that started exploding, and I started to see a counselor, and it just kind of all hit the fan from that point on out. And then it kind of led to some addictive behaviors, and so I would just kind of hit this spiral. I just started going down and down and down, and I knew, and the weird thing is, I could see myself, and I knew that what I was doing, I didn't like it. It didn't feel right, but it was like, it was only kind of escape, or only kind of like, it just felt like the only way I knew how to survive, And looking back on it, I sometimes still feel a lot of shame, and I feel a lot of regret. but at the same time, I don't, because I feel like I had to go through that. You know, I was reading, actually, before we talked today, I was reading through some of my old journal stuff and kind of going, oh, yeah, I remember that, you know. And it just got very dark. It just got very dark. And, but I somewhere, I was blessed with a fight, I guess, inside me and I was blessed with a lot of, I look back now, especially with just a lot of God's miracles in my life, people and situations and things that were said to me, and a former track colleague that called one day and just said, don't you give up your testimony, you fight for your testimony. And things like that that were said to me that made me ponder. I thought to myself, what if it's all a lie?
Yeah. Did your that former you said a former trackmate?
Track colleague. Yeah.
Track colleague. Was that out of the blue? Did they know that you were going through struggles, or what was going on?
That's a good question. So yeah, I'd started sharing some things on social media that was probably very indicative that I'm going through something.
Gotcha.
Saying some angry things, and part of the anger too, by the way, was with my dad. So I didn't have much of a relationship, and I can't say not a relationship. I don't know how to explain this. Like, I couldn't envision a relationship with God based on how my relationship with my dad was. He's a military guy, right? Military guy.
Yeah.
Not super warm, loving, fuzzy. And I just, I'd sit in church sometimes and listen to people give talks on Father's Day or whatever about, oh, my dad is so amazing. I just be like, oh, brother, here we go again, and my dad's great in a lot of ways because he taught me how to play. He taught me how to, enjoy life. But he was never really just there for me emotionally, Didn't teach me how to love God. And so a lot of my anger became towards my dad, right? And I taught.
Gotcha.
And so, I was just this confused mess for the longest time. And so one time my husband sat down with me and he said, look, I don't care. You go search out other faiths if you want to, that's fine. But don't read anti stuff. That's our only agreement we have to agree on. I have no problem with you going and researching other faiths or researching whatever you need to do, but don't read anti stuff. And so we kind of agreed on that, right? And we've always had a great relationship like that we could kind of talk about things like that at least. And because I had some friends that when they knew I was struggling, I had some friends trying to dish me some of that stuff, right? Saying, oh really? Well, here you go.
Yeah, let's help you come up. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me give you some of this stuff. Let me show you why you're right. And so one day, he's like, hey, can you just do it for the kids? And I said, I can't do it for the kids anymore. It's too exhausting. I did, though, however, put on a happy face and go to church every Sunday. And then when they go into class, and I kind of just either go to the car or go out to the foyer or whatever and sit and do my own thing. And so I tried really hard to not sneeze so my kids would catch a cold, kind of a thing.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I always wanted their faith journey to be their faith journey too, not whatever my faith journey was. And so
Gotcha. Yeah.
I really, really tried to work hard for that. And I wanted them to own their own faith journey and not be persuaded by whatever my faith journey was.
Yeah.
And so, so one day Jim just sat down. We sat down together, and he said, let's just read together. And I opened up the church website, and it used to have like the presidency message at the very top, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's this conference talk on. It had this story about, I can't remember even what the story was. Some of the saints and how, because of the persecution, they some of them fell away, and some of them hung on. They held on a little longer. So it's basically like this hold on a little longer was a talk. I think it was the title.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know if you remember that one at all, but so the whole message was, hold on a little longer. You have no idea what's in store for you, for those that put their faith in God, and just hold on a little longer. That was kind of the theme.
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, it was really good. I was actually going through my journal and I read through it again. Like, it kind of brought back some emotions, you know?
Mm.
So that day I went out for a run at a lake around here. And after I was finished with the run, I went with this out to this kind of pier or whatever you want to call it. And it was kind of the middle of the winter. And so there's like this fog over the lake. And out in the middle
Okay.
of the lake was this log. And on this log stood this blue heron. And it just sat there. And the log was ever so like slowly just turning around in a circle, really slowly. And the entire time the blue heron just sat there. And I don't think I've ever prayed out loud in my life, but I prayed out loud and I'm like, what do you want from me? You know, like what?
Yeah.
And I just remember this overwhelming feeling coming over me of just like, be still and know that I am God, you know? And and that was the first time I'd felt like I'd had any kind of answer to a prayer in a long time. You know, just be still and know that I am God. And I had battled some addiction stuff. I had battled just loss of faith. I had battled all kinds of stuff. And that was the first time I thought, okay, well then show me, you know, what I need to do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my first, I guess, step back, if that makes any
Gotcha.
sense.
Yeah.
And I'd still battled. I still battled. I went through a disciplinary council with all kinds of stuff. And I couldn't take the sacrament for a while, which, by the way, was a blessing. You know, it was a real blessing, actually. I call that part of my life is like my little walking hand in hand with Christ.
Nice.
And I think a lot of people that might be outside of our faith might view that as a punitive thing or a punishment. Or I actually think like it's an actual kind of a blessing if you let it. Now,
Yeah.
first,
No, I totally agree, and it's not a very popular opinion, but the idea is that, hey, we don't want you to continue doing what you're doing while having these covenants because it's only going to damn you more.
right.
Like that's the idea of it. Now I understand that looks different socially because now people either know like, oh, you're not taking the sacrament, or oh, you hear, oh, this person got excommunicated or what have you. But I think the intent is sincere. But I think as humans, we care about so much about perception that we give to other people or what other people might think of us, and that we kind of twist it into this punishment.
Right.
And I mean, I think I did on another video, and I might be redoing it anyways. But I mean, I had to do that's similar before going on my mission, and then also even after my mission, I had to go through a similar thing, and I never felt like I was being punished personally. One, because I knew what I was doing was wrong. It actually felt like a load off my shoulders, being able to confess these things and just know like I was on the path of forgiveness. I never felt it as I'm confessing to an individual, but that individual is helping me truly repent, so that way I can have that, feel that with God. And I don't know if you felt. It sounds like you felt the same way in your journey.
Yeah, I did. It took me a minute.
Yeah.
I knew going into it, I knew what that was gonna be, what it was like. But I think I call it like, you know, like when you tame a wild horse and you first put the rope around their neck and they just kick and throw. You know, that's kind of how I felt at first.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, you don't. And
Yeah.
I was actually angry for about a month or two. I think afterwards, I was like, how could you do this to me? You know.
Yeah.
And then my counselor, who's LDS, a great guy. He actually one day says, "You're just Naaman." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You're Naaman. He's asking you to do these simple things, and why don't you want to do them?" You know? And I'm like, so he told me the whole story of Naaman, and he went through the whole thing about, you know, how the servant went and said, you know, he came to him and said, "Hey, you just need to go bathe in the River Jordan 7 times." And he's like, "What? I came all the way out here to you, you know? What are you talking about?" So he told me this whole story, and I'm like, well, I'll be darned. If I'm not Naaman, you know, 'cause I was just prideful, super prideful.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of have the pride taken out of me and a little stripped out of me a little bit. And I
Yeah.
was like, you know, how come I had such a hard time overcoming these addictive, you know, behaviors and tendencies? And I remember reading in you know, Ether 12:26, I think it is, right? There was like, if you come into me, I'll make your weaknesses strong. But the key part I missed was if you humble yourself and come unto me,
Yeah.
right? That's a part I was missing.
Yeah.
So it took me a minute. It took me a minute to get to that point and be grateful. And once I kind of realized that, and I humbled myself and allowed myself to be molded, you know, and allow myself, and not be molded by my bishop or not be molded by people around me, but be molded by Christ.
Yeah.
That's when things really started to be magical for me, you know,
Gotcha.
and really change. And people would make comments on how my whole countenance changed,
No.
you know, and not that, by the way, not that things got immediately easier. I was still having some ups and downs with addiction. I was still having some ups and downs with, you know, just life in general. But one thing I was started to learn how to be able to do, that I learned how to do, is a great book I read that was, I can't remember, I think it was called The Uses of Adversity. That's what it was called.
Okay.
And it talked about how sometimes when we grow up, our perception is, and the gospel is, that we, you know, we keep all the commandments, we do these things, and we're on this yellow brick road, and we're going to the Wizard of Oz, you know, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. But that the atonement of Christ, the gospel of Christ, is not insurance against tribulation. It's a resource for tribulation. And once I made that paradigm shift, instead of like, I'm doing all these things, why are you giving me these trials? Instead of it's like, oh, here's a trial. Now I can really use the gospel to help me get through this trial, you know?
Wow. I like that. I haven't heard that quote or had heard it put that way before. I really like that. So it's not to protect you from trials, but to help you be prepared to overcome those trials when they do come into your life. I like that.
Right.
That's
and
awesome.
give you peace in the midst of those trials, right? And confidence. And, you know, and since then, you know, we've had loss in our life again, and we've had trials in our life again, but I don't have the same knee-jerk reaction of anger and the knee-jerk reaction of fear. Now it's like, okay, we're going to get through this. You know, we have the gospel, we have our knowledge, we have peace, we have faith. And it's such a difference, you know, it's just such a difference in moving through life with that kind of, and not having to move through life with this, you know, what's lurking around the corner, fear all the time versus just faith. And I'm not going to lie, like sometimes my, you know, some of my little triggers will pop up, and those emotions will creep up, and I'll have to kind of check myself a little bit, because, you know, we're all humans still. But yeah, it's been quite a journey, and to kind of, like I say, sometimes I'll look back and feel a little bit of shame or a little bit of guilt or remorse. But then there's always two sides of that coin, right? You flip the coin over and go, except I'm so grateful for it, because I would not have the firm foundation and the testimony I have today, standing on the rock of salvation, if I hadn't have gone through that, you know. And it's such a dichotomy.
Yeah, I know. I 100% agree. I actually had someone on X recently found an old photo of me and DM'd it to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know this was online. And it reminded me of just like a period of my life where I was just like, you know what, I'm not anywhere near that person anymore. And there's times, like you said, there's times where I look back, I'm like, man, like, I hate that I did this or did that or what have you. But then it allows me to look back, and sometimes I feel like I really, like, how much have I actually changed? And then when I saw that photo, I'm like, man, I've actually changed a whole lot. And people who know me now on X or on these interviews wouldn't even believe the person that I was before. And so it's almost like like you said, a catch-22. It's like, man, I hate that I had to go through that or do things that I did. But at the same time, not going to look and say, yeah, I actually really have changed. And it was the gospel of Jesus Christ that really changed me when I decided to let it do so.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
When I was reading my journal today, I loved it because I took these notes that said heart transplant. And it said, you know, when people go through a heart transplant, they receive a new heart. They can't just receive a new heart and then just go about their life, right? They have to do certain things and take certain medications and do certain things. And so it said, don't forget, you have a new heart. You have to keep up with your new heart. Like, you have to read your scriptures. You have to continually take care of that new heart and not just take it for granted, because, you know, we have to remember, right? Always remember, and not just take it for granted. And I do sometimes. Sometimes I get going along and just feel like, oh, I can just skirt through life and I don't have to pay attention to those things. But it's like, I have to take care of this testimony. I have to take care of this new heart that I have. And it's easy to kind of get going with the flow of life and kind of forget about that, you know?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so,
that's a good point. And that's actually, yeah, I never even thought about it like that as well. Like you said, you can't just get a new heart and skirt through life. There's a lot that you have to do, a lot of upkeep to make sure that heart is continuing to function, and you don't waste the new heart that you got that gave you a second chance at life.
second chance at life. Exactly.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, wow, that's beautiful. I've never thought of it like that before. Um, so so your husband sounds like he was a fairly patient through
Oh,
your
gosh.
personal journey.
If he could, if I always tell him he should write a book on how to deal with somebody that's going through a faith crisis, because he was amazing. You know,
Yeah.
he would pray for me. I know he would. He put my name in the temple, and he would talk to me, but he wouldn't preach at me, you know?
Okay. I was gonna ask that. Did it feel like he was being pushy, or it sounded like he was pretty
Yep.
natural?
Pretty natural. And like the one time he said, "Can you just do it for the kids?" kind of a thing. And that's when I kind of pushed back. Like, I can't do it for the kids. I have to do this for me, you know? As much as I love my kids, of course, I want to do it for the kids, but it has to be genuine, right? It has to be pure. It can't be just,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to go through the motions here, you know? And he's like, yeah, I get that, you know? And so, yeah, we had some really good conversations. He was awesome. He really was, you know, a gem. I went through some addiction recovery classes through the church, which, by the way, I got to tout that program because it's amazing. I think
Awesome.
everybody should go
Okay.
through it at some point. You know, we all have our own addictive practices, but amazing
Yep.
program.
Okay.
And so, yeah, no, he was amazing.
Awesome. And so it sounds like one day he decided, hey, let's just sit down and read together. And you said you pull up, you go onto the church website, you see this talk, and you read it, basically telling you, hold on, you don't know what's going on, what's going to happen around the corner.
Right.
It reminds me of this image I've seen online, where it's a picture of a miner, like an actual, like not a kid, but like a miner.
Yeah.
And there's two levels, and it showed one give up, and right behind the last little sliver of dirt is a bunch of diamonds.
Yeah.
And it shows that person walking back, and it shows the one on top of him getting ready to strike through that one little
Sliver.
sliver of dirt to hit the diamonds. Where so one finally gave up, not knowing what the next last hit was going to be. And that's what that kind of reminds me, is that because of the fact that I don't know if you said it was the next day or not, but pretty shortly after, it sounds like you went on a run and you say your first vocal prayer. And you have this overwhelming feeling of just, I've got you.
Yeah.
I'm aware of you.
Yeah. I know who you are.
Yeah. And so it sounds like that gave you enough pause to kind of reevaluate and start your process of your getting back into church, your addiction
And keep
recovery.
going. Yeah, just keep going.
keep going.
Right? Yeah. And it
Gotcha.
happened a couple times. I remember one time standing on the back porch back there and just like, God, I'm trying. I feel like I'm never going to get there, right? I'm trying.
Yeah.
I keep falling, and I'm trying, and I keep falling, and I just don't feel like I'm just like the good member, right? Or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
that. And I just remember, again, just having this still small voice sort of whisper to me, and it's like, that's all I expect you to do. You know, just
Yeah.
keep trying. You know, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
I can do that. I can keep trying, you know, and
Yeah.
because when you feel like you're just putting, you know, trying so hard to do things or not do things or whatever, and it's just almost impossible sometimes. It gets really just because you feel like you have to be perfect, you know.
Yeah.
And then if you take a few steps back, then it's like,
Like,
and it gets really frustrating. Yeah, it just gets frustrating, and and it's like I can never, it's never going to happen, you know.
yeah.
And so that's one thing I realized. So I was reading my journal today, and I remember one day thinking addiction is like having a really bad friend you can't let go of, right? You keep going back. Like I teach high school, so I see kids, they'll leave and go to like an addiction recovery place. They'll come back and they'll get right back in with their friends they were in before and right back into the same
Yeah.
habits, right? And so I remember one time I have a good friend. I said, you know what? This addiction is like an old friend that I just can't let go of. And so I'm just going to write it a letter. I'll write it a letter tell it, thank you for being in my life. I appreciate you being there when I needed you, which you didn't need because you were in a pile of crap, right? But I'm getting rid of you. I need to get rid of you. And I burned this letter to ashes, and I put it in a jar and put it in my windowsill. And in the process of burning that letter, I realized that the friend was Satan. I was making friends with Satan instead of Christ, right? And that was kind of a weird feeling. Like, it was like this whole time when I would get into a bad spot or I get emotionally down or whatever, and I would turn to this thing, which, by the way, the thing works every time, right? It makes you feel okay when you reach for it.
Yeah.
For a minute until it doesn't anymore, right?
Yeah.
There's this promise of this immediate fix or whatever, and then it's gone, and you're left with this pile of mess to clean up, and then where's he? He's gone.
Yep.
You know, and so you realize it's really not the addiction you're making your friend. You're really you're making Satan your friend, right?
Gotcha.
And that was kind of a weird feeling. And I recently told I've been helping a lot of people around our ward here, and I recently told a friend, like, I have never developed a stronger testimony for Christ than by the reality of Satan, the dark side.
Interesting.
So powerful, you know, and how the reality of the pull, you know, like you're saying, all the problems we've been running into, you know, somebody's got to hear this somewhere.
I know.
You know, I mean, it's just the force is real, you know, and why is that, you know?
Yeah.
So
that's a good point. I don't know if I remember reading this or it's just coming to my mind, but so you had that spiritual experience where, you know, God says, I'm here, I'm aware of you, I got you. Have you had any other spiritual experiences in your life that helped solidify your testimony or help you get back on the path and the straight and narrow?
You know, so all through my life, I feel like I've had several little experiences. You're talking about like since then or throughout my entire life?
Throughout your entire life, whether before, maybe something you look back to now, you're like, oh yeah, that's something I lean on, or even during that time period, or even since you've been active.
Yeah, I mean, I've had quite a few spiritual experiences. Some are probably too personal to share.
Fair.
I had a couple, when my mom passed away, I had a couple really powerful dreams that I had when she passed away that were really, really powerful. But, you know, the interesting thing is, like, and I've heard this in a talk somewhere, that those spiritual experiences are not testimony, you know? They're kind of make you aware of God, but they're not the testimony that lives in every fiber of your being of, does that make sense? Like,
it does, because just real quick, it makes sense because when you think about the scriptures, there's so many people that have spiritual experiences, see angels, etc., and go right back to what they're doing. And like a lot of people think, oh, if God just tells me or God just shows me,
right,
then I'll do this. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. So like I think about the story of in the Bible where I'm gonna completely butcher it now. Is it I think it was also his name was also Lazarus, the rich, but anyways, he dies, he goes to hell, realizes, crap, like I was wrong, let me tell my family. And he was told, no, they have the prophets. And he's like, well, no, like if I go, then they'll definitely listen to me. And he's like, no, if they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, they wouldn't even believe, even if you were resurrected from the dead.
Right.
And it's like, wow, like even if someone came back to life, it's possible they'd still not believe. And I just read again in the Book of Mormon, I believe it was the end of, Alma, the end of Alma, I believe. But people seeing all these miracles, and then it said, essentially in layman's term, after time, they started questioning that those things happened, and they started being able to kind of overthink and overanalyze and explain away the miracle that happened, to the point where they were just back to what they were doing before.
Yep. Yeah, I completely. And us as human beings, especially if we distance ourselves from the spirit, we kind of go, yeah, what was that the spirit? Was that a spiritual experience, or was this just
Yep. I've
this
done that
thing,
myself.
right? Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And so, while I have had these manifestations, these spiritual experiences I've had, I love those and I treasure those. But I think the journey I had more with really trying to really seek Christ, to seek God, to seek my relationship with God through that whole process. That's what I value the most, because that's what really I planted my feet in rock, right? That I kind of come to know Christ and what he's all about, and the atonement, what the atonement was all about. That's what I found my testimony in. Then I think I was gifted those experiences along the way to kind of let me know, I see you,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I know you, I know what you're going through, you know. And I think I might have shared this with you. My brother was excommunicated before he passed away. And so after I had kind of gone through my whole mess and I was taken off probation and so forth, I reached out to my bishop. Like, none of our family could figure out how to have my brother's blessings restored. So my bishop helped me figure it out, and I wrote a letter to the First Presidency. And then shortly after I was taken off probation, he called me and says, "Hey, it's been approved. Your brother's going to have his blessings restored."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Well, can I go down and witness it?" And they said they'd allow a couple people, not a big group, they don't want to make a big thing of it, but sure, they'd let me come down. And I'd always had the temple's always been something I struggled with all my life.
Okay.
One thing I always hung on to, I always knew the prophet was a prophet. That's one thing I think I was just gifted, I would watch General Conference and just love it. And I always believed that the prophets were, guiding us. The temple was always something I just kind of struggled with. And so I flew down to Utah, and I got to, I didn't get to witness a rebaptism, but I got to witness his restoration of his blessings. And I can't even explain in words what that felt like in that room.
Yeah.
And so I walked out of that temple that day with a completely different temple experience for myself. It was almost like my brother. It was almost like my brother was on his own sort of parallel journey on the other side of the veil, while I was on my little journey on this side of the veil, sort of.
And you both made it.
And we both made it, and then we just kind of,
Yeah.
kind of, hurrah,
That's cool. That is
It was
cool.
just such a cool experience,
Yeah.
And so those kind of things, I feel like, when we do that, just like when in that conference talk I read that said, "Hold on a little longer." It said, "You have no idea the things that God has in store for those that continue to seek God."
Yeah.
And I think those are the kind of things that he will give us and bless us with as we continue to seek him.
Yeah.
So.
Man, I actually didn't even know. So when I've heard about people getting their blessings restored after they passed, I guess I didn't even realize until now that it's also done via proxy. I guess I just kind of assumed I don't know what I thought now that I think about it.
I didn't
it makes
either.
sense. But I was always thinking like maybe the prophets and apostles basically were just like,
checkbox.
They talked about it. It was like, yeah, okay, this person's good. Like I didn't think like, oh, we're gonna go through the baptism and confirmation and everything like again. And so that's actually really cool that you're able to witness that, because that's unique, and I don't know if rare is the right word, but that's not like you just going to the temple and doing having endowments done for those who have passed, or baptisms and whatnot. But that's a completely different thing, being able to see not someone maybe getting something for the first time, but you being able to witness potentially someone coming back after they pass. Yeah, and it's your brother.
And I just had this feeling that my mom has been with my brother over there, and this man came in and introduced himself that he's going to be proxy for my brother, and it was just the coolest experience, man. It was just really cool. And I appreciate this opportunity, because it made me rip my journal out and I read the whole experience, and I just got kind of teary-eyed again all over again. And it was, and then I kind of get this feeling of gratitude that I've been able to kind of walk this journey. As much as it was tough, man, it was so hard, and those several years were just I felt so disconnected with the Word, right? Because and it's interesting when you're in that space, you kind of look for things to find fault with, right? You're going to justify how you feel. And so that person said that because, I'm offended by that, or that person did this. And really, it's just kind of inner manifestation of how you feel right at the time,
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel not sorry. I feel compassion for people that are struggling, because I feel like it's just kind of more of a reflection of what their insides are doing, you know, when they're finding fault with whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And something that I think I was talking to my wife about this recently, but, and this has come from my experience, sounds like for yours, there could be other people who actually all have had experiences where members judge them, rude to them, whatever, because of their faith journey. But I know for me, I was talking to my wife about this. Someone said something about like it was about like gym culture, where some people don't want to go to the gym for the first time because they're afraid people are going to look at them and judge them. But like 99.9% of people at the gym aren't looking at you. They're
Yeah,
worried about what they're
exactly.
doing, or they're
Exactly.
looking at themselves. But you have this idea, or you place this idea in your mind that other people are judging you because the way you look, the way you're
Right.
working out, etc. When that's really not the case.
Nobody even
I'm
cares.
sure. Yeah, and there's always outliers. I know there's going to be people who do, but the vast majority are just happy for you to be taking the steps to become healthy. Um, and I feel like that
Right.
same principle applies to people who are going through a faith crisis, or have, you know, either been excommunicated or disfellowshipped, and might have that kind of that same idea where like, oh, I just know people are going to judge me. And it's like, I don't know if most people actually do. Obviously there are people who do. There's just, you're always going to have bad apples. But I think most
Right.
people are just excited for you to be there and to continue on your journey, and hopefully be able to have everything
Yep.
restored again.
And the thing is, they might judge you, right? And I remember
Yeah.
one time I went down. So after I kind of gone through the addiction recovery process and so forth, I became a facilitator. And the lady that was in charge wanted me to go down to this big meeting in this state down in Oregon, whatever, and kind of, you know, do this training, whatever. And I'll never forget, she said, "Can I introduce you?" And I said, "Sure." So she introduces me, and then states what my addiction was, which was like, I kind of had this moment, you know, like, and I was so embarrassed. And then, and I remember at the moment thinking, it doesn't matter, man. Like, look up. That's all you have to worry about. If anybody else wants to judge you, then that's their thing. They have to work with God. That's not your problem, right? If somebody wants to
Absolutely.
judge me, that's none of my business, right? And so I recently had a gal in our ward that had been gone and was trying to come back, and she wanted to meet with me and talk with me, which I just so honored. So we went with a long walk, and she was saying, "I'm just so afraid that people are going to think I'm weird, or something's just, you know, they're going to judge me." And I said, "Well, here's the deal. They might. I can't promise you they won't, but that's none of your business. Your business is between you and God, you know? And when you start to feel that anxiety that somebody might be judging you or looking at you weird, just look up and just know that your confidence is with Him. And if you're doing the right thing, that's all you got to worry about, you know?" And so
I love
that's
that.
one thing I had to go with too.
Awesome. All right. So, excellent spouse, patience, wasn't pushy, let you kind of work out your own things, but also being there. And then you finally take that leap of reading. You read, just hold on. You pray out loud for the first time. You have this spiritual experience and multiple throughout your time. And then, long story short, you end up overcoming these things. And like you said, we all go through ebbs and flows, even as faithful members on the straight and narrow. Like, that's the point of life, that happens, but that's why we have the atonement. But overall, you have come out from that side of Satan and have realized and understood Christ better.
Yeah.
And so, with that, I guess, what keeps you going now? And what's maybe one thing that you hope someone can learn from your story?
I think what keeps me going now is just hope, right? Hope and faith. And like I said, every once in a while, I'll kind of get that sort of down on myself feeling like that, oh, I should have been this, or I should have been that, or if this wouldn't have happened, then I could have been better than this, whatever. And I just realize that that's Satan talking in my ears. He doesn't want to see us progress, you know? And so that's kind of what keeps me going. And also just, I teach high school. I love the youth. The youth keep me going. And I feel like I need to be a strong example, you know? And I try to talk real with them, not be phony like I'm this perfect person, you know? I try to talk pretty
I
real.
like that. Yeah.
And I know my bishop told me, a long time ago, he says, you're going to help a lot of people. If you're
Yeah.
vulnerable with yourself, you're going to help a lot of people, and especially women. A lot of women.
Yep.
I think a lot of times there's a lot of pressure to be perfect,
Yep.
and to just kind of be vulnerable and be real, with people.
That's
And
awesome.
so that's kind of my hope. What was the other one?
Yeah. The other one was, what is one thing that you want someone
Oh,
to get out of your story?
yeah. I think what I want people to get out of my story is that we're all in that man in the arena. That story, the man in the arena, face down in the dirt, and there's just always that moment that we make a decision to fight. And I've seen too many people when they get struggling, whether it's faith crisis or whatever it is, they run away instead of turning and fighting with it. That's the wrestle with Enos and God, right? Enos's
Yep.
wrestle. I don't think that happened. I mean, well, maybe it did. I don't know, but I'm thinking it didn't happen in one night. Maybe it
Hmm.
happened over a really long time, like a year. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's okay to wrestle with God. It's okay to be, have a good heartfelt conversation with him sometimes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we're taught to be so proper in our prayer and, and respectful in our prayer. And I think he wants us to kind of really talk with him, be
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to be okay to fight for our faith. Like my friend had told me, fight for your testimony, fight for your faith,
Yeah.
and fight for your family, man. Fight. And because it's a war.
Yeah.
It's a real war out there. And so that's what I think I would like a message to get across is that we're all tougher than we give ourselves credit for, and we need to
I
be
love that.
Enos. More Enos's out there.
Yeah. I know. I love that. And I think what I hear from that, to wrap up, is it's okay to doubt. You're going to. It's okay to have questions. I mean, our faith, the restoration was built on a question, right?
Exactly.
A 14-year-old boy who had a question, and it was okay to have questions. We are human. We're going to doubt. The question is, are you going to do the work to try and fight for your testimony?
Yep.
Or are you going to let those things come flying at you and run for cover? Um, Almost like a flight or fight response. And that's not to shame those who end up leaving, because I know there's some people who
Right.
end up leaving and they still did all they thought.
Right.
But my hope is that people do at least fight.
Exactly.
That's my hope. If you can honestly say you fought and did what you could, then I just pray and hope that at some point God is able to help lead you onto a path that brings you back. But
Yep.
I do also hope that you have a great life, whether or not that is the case.
Just continue to fight for truth, right? Fight for truth,
Yep.
seek for truth, and fight for your family.
Amen.
That's
Love
the
that.
biggest thing. So
Awesome. Well, for everyone that tuned in, I appreciate it. I do hope that you got something from this episode. For me, what stood out is it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to let God know that you're angry. Let God know that you're confused about something, and to fight for your testimony, whether it's people around you that can help you, whether it's a scripture, whether it's a spouse in the situation, having someone that can be patient and be there for you. I think another thing that stands out now is the importance of being there and being loving and understanding to those going through that, because you might have had a completely different story if your spouse handled this a different way. And I think a lot of
100%.
credit will probably go to your husband and how he was able to be patient and loving and not pushing,
Yep.
to try and appease what the perception might be like, but instead let you work through what you needed to. And so I think that's a huge thing to come out of the story as well.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. I really do think, with all the issues we had a year ago trying to get things going, and like an hour of trying to get this going today, that this is really needed for somebody or for multiple people. And I'm really excited for people to hear this. And so I'm truly appreciative of you being patient, working through these trials for us to finally get your story out there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time as well. Appreciate the opportunity to share my story.
Yeah, thank you so much. For those tuning in, don't take our word. The Spirit is the one that testifies. Moroni 10, 3 through 5. Read the Book of Mormon. Gain a better understanding of our Savior. Pray to know if these things are true. And remember that it's not just people who convert to the church that are new. We all have our own conversion stories, our own faith journeys, and to allow the Spirit to enter your hearts to help you get through that. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.